In this week's podcast, Jen and I speak to a friend of ours named Bill. Bill is an engineer, an MBA, and a sought after business consultant. Bill had a very successful career in the corporate world and is very passionate about teaching the tools and principles for financial freedom. Throughout Bill's life, Bill has formulated principles for how to become financially free. He has successfully done this himself, and he has successfully taught his son these same principles from an early age. A lot of our beliefs, knowledge, and understandings about the world and how to function in this society are formulated in our teenage years in our childhood. And this becomes our foundational map of the world as we enter into society as young adults. Like it or not, money is a major part of our society. It's how our society runs. And financial stress is a factor for a large majority of young adults. It can have a major impact on mental health, on relationships, and beyond. And for this reason, we believe it's important for teenagers to begin to learn and develop a healthy understanding of money, its value, and how to take care of it before entering the world as young adults. In today's episode, we discuss the power of compound interest. We discuss the importance of long-term thinking. Bill shares with us some powerful beliefs and principles that drive financial excellence. Bill shares his top financial principles for teenagers that he taught his son, and much more. Bill is passionate, entertaining, and full of great wisdom. We hope you enjoy.
Yeah, welcome, Bill. So I would love to just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and sharing that with the people who are listening and watching.
Well, sure. First of all, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Luke, for inviting me here. I've done a lot of speaking in my business career and in my sports career, all kinds of places, never on a podcast. So this is a little different for me. So it's not good. You'll tell me and we'll edit, I guess. How's that? Yeah. So let me tell you about myself. Let me put it in the context of what we're talking about today, because tell me about yourself is a very broad question. So let me start by saying that I was born the oldest of 4 children, and I'm not going to tell you the year because that gives too much information away. But I was one of the last baby boomers. So I was the firstborn, and it was a long time ago. And really, so my dad was in his early 20s when I was born. It was a young family. And at that time they were living in the inner city of Philadelphia. So, I didn't sense it I didn't know it until I was probably second or third grade or even later, but it was a week to week struggle in my family to get by. Money was tight. I'm not saying I didn't have a good life because I didn't know all that stuff. I had a good life. I played my games with my friends and all that stuff. But I learned as I got into elementary school that it was a struggle in my family. Okay. So I learned things like money was tight. I learned that money had value because I remember when you go to the store and if you want a piece of candy, you need a dime or a nickel, whatever it was. So money had value. That I remember my parents instilling in me that, money was not something that was given to me. It had to be earned. So, at age 7, how do you earn money? Well, you get an allowance and you're doing, I'm getting paid 5 cents a week to put my dirty dish in the sink or whatever. So you learn these things at an early age. Okay. So that's the first part of my answer to tell me about yourself. Okay. Now let me give you part 2. As I got older, I realized I was pretty good at math and science. I was a little bit of a math geek. No. I was a very much of a math geek. I was actually on the mathletics team. Wow. So in high school, we actually competed. We'd take a school bus to other schools and competed on math problems. So I was not sitting at the cool kids table at lunch and I was not meeting all the girls and all that. I was good at math and science. And I understood the principles about money as I said earlier. So let me just take a pause there and tell you that's a little bit of a background about myself in the context of what we're going to talk about today. Okay.
Awesome. Really good.
I love that. And so shifting gears a little bit, but staying in the telling us a bit more about you space, would you share some of your experience in like the business world and finances and how you learned about finances?
I would love to. Yeah. So, being a math geek, of course, when I got out of college, what we math guys did was we went into engineering school. And I did that. And I went into engineering. It's 4 years at Penn State Engineering School. Had very good grades, very good performance. Came out of that with a high-paying job, $26,000 a year. I thought I was rich, man. I stopped on the way home, bought a case of Molson Golden Ale beer. I was celebrating this huge salary I had. So I remember that was my start. And then I went into engineering for a while. And I was a pretty good engineer, but not a great engineer. I think the engineering profile was different than mine. Let's say I was into sports. I learned leadership at an early age through Boy Scouts, through sports leadership. I learned a lot of things that were outside the normal engineering knowledge base. So I wasn't, even though I said I was a math geek, I wasn't an engineering geek as much. So I spent 7 successful years in engineering. But as I got I got promoted at higher levels of engineering, got more money, got more compensation, so I was doing well. But at some point, I decided I wanted to go back to school and get my MBA, my Master's of Business Administration, because I saw the guys that were running the business were making a lot more money. They were driving the good cars, and they had time to actually breathe and take a lunch break, which I didn't always have. So I went and got my MBA, and I focused in finance. Okay, so and if I'm not boring you yet with this, from there I went into more management type roles, and it was always in manufacturing companies. And back then, this is in the 80s, 90s, manufacturing companies were always struggling. Every year, every quarter, for God's sakes, it was a struggle. So if you were good technically, as I was, as an engineer, but you could also manage financials and budgets and things like that, there was a place for you in these businesses. So I ended up getting into roles where I was using those skills of finance. And first I'd be managing a department's budget. Here's your salaries, here's your operational expenses, and managing that. And I was good at that. And anytime you're good at something, they give you more and more and more till you break it at the breaking point, So eventually I was managing the financials for divisions of a business, and then almost for entire businesses. So I did this more and more along the way. This kept growing in both management stature, but also along with that was the financial management of different divisions, different branches of the businesses I was in. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so helpful for me to understand like how you built some of those skills. And so one of the things that we spoke about when we were all together in Florida was how you learned about compound interest at such a young age, and how that like really inspired you and excited you, and got you even more excited to keep pursuing this passion for like.
Before we go to that question,
Oh yeah, sure.
I wanted to ask you a question, Bill, around like getting the MBA. What was that like for you, and how did that transform your mindset around, I guess, business and finances, and just, yeah, was that it's obviously a prize sort of thing to do, but was that what was the transformation for you when you got that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because my son is now 27. I've convinced him to do his. He's halfway through his MBA. Nice. And I can tell you what I did in mine, Luke. I was working my tail off in business as an engineer, and then I have to go, and I'd be working 10, 11 hours a day, and then I have 3 hours of MBA classes at night, and it was tough. It was tough. And then I moved to Puerto Rico for a year, for God's sakes. I lost a year of my education. Wow. And then I was in St. Kitts. So I was moving around, and the MBA was a hard thing to put in place because of the timing of my schedule was too packed. But the knowledge of what I was learning in my MBA courses was the technical stuff behind what I saw in the real world of business. Here's what accounting is like. Here's what business finance is like. Credits, debits, balance sheets, cash flow, all the things that I was involved with at work, but I didn't know the science behind it. I got that in the MBA. So I really, that's why my son, I encouraged him. I said, Bill, you got to do this MBA thing, because not only did it put the scientific framework behind what I was already doing, but doing kind of ad hoc. But the minute I got the MBA, guys, my career just went whoa, like a rocket.
And was that due to everything you learned in the MBA, or was it due to the fact that it's so reputable to have one? Would you say, or both?
Yeah, it's great. It's hard to say. It was partly that the knowledge was partly luck, the timing of different job changes I made, the equity of having that in my personal background. It's hard to say. It was all the above, but I don't think it was just that here's Bill and I have an MBA, here's my degree. It was in the interview I would come across as knowing these things, and then when I got into the work, I was always a hard worker. So these things would just come out, and I always do a little bit more than the next guy, or a little bit more thoroughly than the next guy. And I think that was all part of the same thing. So I don't think there was a magic wand or any one thing that caused that. But it's just so funny how the timing, and I tell my son this, man, the minute I got that MBA, my career took off. Don't know exactly why, but it did. You should do it. And then that's what he's doing. So
yeah. So I'm sure it's a combination of doing the work, learning everything you learned from that, the reputability of the MBA, but backed by your work ethic and excellence, or your commitment to excellence, which is something Jen and I try to instill in our students. And
that's in fact, I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry, I'm talking over. I'm glad you said that, because one of my core principles is you need to be excellent. And I'm not saying in everything, for God's sakes. You need to be excellent in the things that you love to do, and hopefully the things that you're getting paid to do. And if you're committed to excellence in whatever it is, and you work hard enough, you're going to be successful in life. So I think it's a Warren Buffett principle, but it's certainly one of mine as well.
I love it.
I love it, because if you're going to spend your precious time, your precious life, energy, and time on anything, why not be excellent at it?
Yeah, don't be bad at what you're doing. That's and if you're bad at something, shy away from it and do other things. I mean, I'm not a very good artist. I would never be an artist. But so that's not my thing. And I'm not trying to be an excellent artist. And I can't even draw a stick figure. But I'm being excellent in the things that I find that I love and that I want to put in my career, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you clearly had a lot of drive to become excellent, and I think that is not always in everyone, but it started from a young age, and that sort of takes us back to the question Jen just asked, which was from a story you were telling us about, and about how you learned about compound interest at such a young age, and the value that had on you, and I guess your drive and on mindset towards money at such a young age. Can you tell us a bit about that? So
in fact, I should be able to tell you this pretty easily, because I just told my mom. My mom's 83 years old, and I said, "Remember that story I told you?" She doesn't remember much, but she remembers this story. And it is, when I think it was second grade in my elementary school, and my parents used to give me an allowance of 5 cents, 10 cents. I don't remember what it was, probably a nickel. It wasn't much. It was what they could afford. And what the school did was they brought in a bank representative once a week. And they set up a table in the auditorium or the cafeteria, I can't remember. And you had a bank book, and you bring the bank book and you give the lady a nickel. She'd take it and do her stampy thing on it and give you the bank book back. And now your bank account has grown from, 80 cents to 85 cents or whatever it was. And I used to it was very interesting. I like to see the numbers getting bigger, because even at age 7 or whatever, I knew numbers, and I knew bigger numbers were better, and I knew money had value. So that was good. And then the story I told you, which is absolutely true, this is a true story. One day, she stamped an extra row in the bank book, and it was like 3 cents or something. And I said, what is this? That was the interest on the money that I had in the bank. I said, okay, thank you. And I acted like I knew what she was talking about. Probably I didn't. I went home and I asked my dad, and he goes, oh, that's the interest. That's the money you get for having money in their account. And I'm thinking, age 7, I'm thinking, wait, I can make money for free this way? And in second grade, that's about the depth of my understanding. So then I tried to put more and more in, and I saw that number getting bigger. So that was the root, Jen. That was the story that you probably remember. That was the root of the compound interest thing. of course, now knowing what I know now, of course, compound interest, and even our friend Albert Einstein, you're right about that. Albert Einstein is the father of the atomic bomb and the theory of relativity and all these ingenious scientific principles. And one of his famous quotes is, the most powerful force on earth is the force of compound interest, or the time value of money. Man, I forget exactly how he put it, but you can Google that and look it up. So here's a guy who knows all this scientific stuff, and that's the most powerful force on earth. So must mean something. Well, besides me, I have a lot in common with Albert Einstein. That's one thing it means, obviously. But you can't, when he says it, it's got to be real. So, if I just spent Thanksgiving in Puerto Rico with my family and my young nephew, who, I said, I want you to remember one thing from me, one thing. If you remember this, and he's like, what? The Eagles are the best football team. I said, okay, two things. Yeah. I said, no, if every time you make $1, you save 15 cents. Every time you make $1, save 15 cents. You can spend 85 cents if you want, but save 15 cents, put it in a bank account. And then when you get to $100 or something, I will help you understand how to invest that money and make it grow even more. I said, can you do that? He said, yeah, I think I can do that. Anyone can do that. Anyone can live on 85% of what they earn. So I'm even teaching these kids in Puerto Rico the value of the time value of money. So anyway, I've gone beyond your answering your question there, Jen, but I love that. I love that stuff. I love the time value of money. I love those graphs that show the exponential increase in the wealth, all that stuff. But anyway, I talk too much. I need
Great answer.
No, that's a great answer. And that's part of why, one of the many reasons why we wanted to have you on this podcast, because you are so passionate about educating young kids, like kids, teenagers, young adults
anyone who wants to listen.
Anyone who wants to listen.
Yeah. Anyone who has the willpower to listen to me for blabbering. But when I took the other thing I told you guys is, I'm not real happy with the public education system and what you learn in public schools. At least when I did, it wasn't exactly what you need in the real world to get by. And I think one of the things, of course, personal finance and the time value of money, these things, of course, is obvious. Health and nutrition, how to be on a team. How do you be in business? You're almost always working in a team. How do you play on a team? And then how do you coach a team? These are things you don't learn.
Yeah, like the interpersonal. That's why
communication, leadership.
skills. Yeah.
Yes.
Self-talk.
Yeah.
Why? I'm curious. I was thinking about this before we hopped on this call, and I wanted to ask you, why do you think these very valuable, I would say critical life skills aren't taught in school?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's hard to answer, man. I think it's very hard to change the process. And history. What was the history class? You learn a date. This is the date the Magna Carta was signed. Okay, and you get tested on that. No idea what the Magna Carta is or why it was done or anything like that. So I think it's so hard to change the way things are done, I guess. And that's why people go to homeschooling or other methodologies, I guess. But it really shouldn't be hard. Why not have a class on negotiating? How do you negotiate your first car deal, your car purchase? Things like that that really have a lot of value. So I do like to teach people. I used to, in my business, I think I told you this too, guys. In my business, I used to do voluntarily these lunch and learn sessions. We'd say, bring in your lunch and Bill will tell you, spend an hour on how to negotiate for a car or how to, or this same stuff we're talking about here, personal finance. And they became so popular that the boss said, no, we'll pay for the lunch. We'll bring a lunch in. And I went from having a room of 5 people to an auditorium of 100 people that were listening to these learning things, just basic things like this. Yeah. So I like teaching and I like helping, especially young people, because if you're talking about the time value of money, the earlier you start, the longer that your time horizon is, and the more it helps. So start when you're young, and that's I like to help people do that.
Yeah, it's such a valuable, such an important aspect that's often overlooked, but it's like, I forget who said it. It's like maybe Zig Ziglar or someone said, money's not I'm blowing the quote, but it's something along the lines of money's not that important. It's just it's second after breathing or something. It's like you
Right.
basically needs it. We're in a society that is like through money. And I know I used to be like quite deep in the belief that's like against money, or it just like everyone's about money, and real values in love and connection and all that. But the truth is, sure, it's everything. It's all. It's not either or. It's both and. It's like having that mentality of valuing money and understanding the value of money and understanding the value of how to create that in your life could just transform everyone and make a more peaceful world. I think, people who are doing crime aren't doing it because they got too much money, it's or struggling. A lot of criminals are doing it because they're in despair and they need the money. And I think there'd be more peace if they taught this sort of thing in schools, and less mental stress, less relationship stress. So I think it's such an important factor, and why we want to sort of integrate it with our students as well. And obviously why we got you on, and clearly that's why you're so passionate about it as well, I guess.
Well, part of my passion, Luke, is that if you do things, let me rephrase this. If you follow some basic principles, it's not difficult. It's really not difficult. And as long as you use the time to your advantage, it's really easy. And I make it easy because I don't have time to be. I know people sit and look at newspapers and stock charts and all this stuff. No. You don't need to do any of that. This stuff is much simpler. And some of the people that I was training on this probably 15 years ago when they first came out of college, every once in a while I get a text saying, "Thank you for that, what you told us there." The two people in particular that I spent a lot of time with at lunchtime. One of these was a Chinese girl. She'd come into my office and say, "Tell me about this." And in my lunch hour, we'd sit and talk, and really smart, absorbing person. And now I get a text about every 6 months, 8 months, says, "Thank you for this," because now she's wealthy and she's doing well off, and it's all the basic stuff. So the point is, it's not difficult if you do follow some basic principles.
And we're going to go over some of them principles today, or in the next one?
I think we might cover some of them today.
Okay, cool.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, what's the next question you want to bring?
Yeah. So given where the conversation has gone, I was thinking I wanted to ask you about your experience as a parent of now an adult son. I know you've touched on a few of the things already, but like, what did you teach him about finances that you feel really made a difference in his adult life?
Yeah. Well, first of all, work hard at school, get your MBA, invest in yourself. And there's nothing more important to invest in than yourself, whether it's your training, your education, your health, your weightlifting, whatever it is you're doing, invest in your own well-being. And he's doing that. Save 15 cents or more of every dollar you make. Okay. I taught him how to invest that money, and now he's teaching his friends some of those same principles. We'll get to that. That's a little bit later. That's probably a part 2 of this thing. Take anything that's free. Do you ever turn anything down that's free? Jen, would you? Probably not, right? But you know how many people turn down 401k company matches, health savings account match? Company, they join a company, they don't go into a 401k plan, even though it's free money. Okay. Tuition reimbursement. Some companies pay and people don't take classes. They're going to pay for your education. They don't do it. So take what's free. Coupons, using a coupon. If you're going to go to a certain, restaurant every week, and that restaurant happens to have a coupon, use the coupon. It's free money for yourself. If somebody says, "Hey, you're too cheap," when they say, "Bill, you're cheap, you're using a coupon," I said, "No, I'm not cheap. I just prefer to pay myself before I pay the restaurant." So pay yourself first. That's being cheap, if that's what you call it. But take those things that are free first. And I have a list of them somewhere here. Jen, you're gonna have to cut probably here, but let me see what else I missed on that. What else is free? Oh, yeah, here's another one. Credit card rebates. When you do, so first off, one thing I taught my son is never carry credit card debt over from one month to the next, ever. Because credit card debt is things you could avoid those expenses. Unlike a mortgage or car payment, you need to make those expenses. But a credit card is typically you going out and buying things for yourself. So never go to the extent where you have debt you have to carry over, because the interest rate is astronomical. But also, if you're going to use a credit card, and everybody should have one or two, use the best rebate cards. So you can easily get rebates that are 2% back. Fidelity has a 2% rebate card, and then when the money comes back automatically into your Fidelity account, and you direct it how to be invested, so it grows. Free money coming back, it grows. Amazon has a 5% card. It's a black colored card. I only use it for Amazon, 5% off everything. So all those little things, work hard on those. Your cell phone service. If you're paying $40 a month and your friend is paying $24 a month, find out how he's doing it and switch.
Yes.
That's free to you. So there's things like that you can do to minimize your expense and pay yourself rather than paying your credit card companies or your cell phone companies. Pay yourself first, and then take that money and invest it.
100%, because it adds up over time. Like if you're spending, instead of spending like $40 a month, you're spending $20 a month on your phone. Like take that 20 you're saving times 12. That's how much you're saving over the course of a year. If you do that in multiple areas,
and then
all those savings, and then invest it, it like really adds up. So I would say like maybe it's a bit closed-minded for people to say, oh, you're cheap, when someone has your perspective, your long-term view. You're like, well, actually, I'm investing in myself and growing my wealth.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that, what you said. You could join something, I don't know, some TV service for $3 a month or $7 a month. And I say, oh, I'm not doing that. And they say, you're cheap. Well, when you list that $7 a month and this other $5 a month and the other $40, you list all these monthly subscription charges, it's a lot of money. So if you can cut that down, that's less you're spending to others and more for yourself. So yeah, all those expenses add up. And I'm not saying you don't want to spend. I used to take nice vacations, ski vacations. I spent money on those things, but the dumb things I didn't. Things I don't need. Things that were going to cost me credit card debt with 18% interest rates way back. No, you don't do it.
So can you explain to like kids who are watching this? I'm sure parents are understanding what you mean by you don't want to carry over, you don't want to have with credit card payments, you want to make sure you pay off your credit card each month. If you don't do that, then you get hit with all of this interest on the money that you didn't pay off from the previous month. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah. It's really simple, actually. If let's say you have $100 on a credit card bill, and the credit card company, either electronically or through the mail, sends you something. Well, you owe a minimum payment of $24. Oh, it's only a minimum of $24. I'll pay that. And then so the other $76 is carried over the next month, and they have a very high interest rate on that money. So you pay the 76 plus, maybe another 18% a year, whatever it is, or which comes out to another, maybe another $5, who knows? And that adds up over time. So that's how credit cards those companies make their money. Credit cards companies aren't real thrilled with me, because even though I use the card, I pay it off every month. They don't make any extra money off me, But if you don't pay it off, they're making money off the interest. And because I know a good friend of mine was in a credit card company, he said he loved those people because they're making tons of money, and he was getting tons of big bonuses, all from these people that would rather pay the credit card company than pay themselves. So yeah, you don't want to have those high interest rates out there.
So you got to be careful not to get stuck.
High interest charges, excuse me. Yeah.
So what advice would you give parents wanting to help their teenagers in the area of finance?
Well, I think, first of all, the parents want to start before the teenage years and start at a much younger years when the child's brain is more formative, more willing to pick up new ideas. A couple principles that I would always work on when the child is young, as I did with my son. Money is not free. You have to earn it. You have to, in order to earn it, you have to work hard at something. Whatever you work hard at, you should love to do. You should be passionate about that and work hard to be excellent at it, whatever it is. If you're working at a gas station, as I did when I was a kid, be the best gas station attendant you can be. This is before automatic gas station pumps. Be the best you can at everything you do. And when I found gas station work wasn't what I wanted to do, I moved into something else. But while I'm doing it, be the best you can at that. So those are some things. Now, again, when I go back, always same thing. Save 15 cents or more of every dollar you earn. Put it in the bank. And when it gets to be let's say $100, whatever arbitrary amount, then you start teaching some basic investment principles, which I'll talk about at another time because it's a whole subject of it in and of itself. Those are, again, the basic stuff that we've talked about here. Take things that are free.
Yep. So
don't be wasteful with time or money. I don't know. I think I covered it all.
So I got a question there because I hear my younger self going, well, I hear you be excellent in everything you're passionate about, but I'm not passionate about school and math. So
right.
What's your advice there for?
Yeah. Well, you're like 90% of the people out there or more, Luke. I mean, who's passionate about math besides geeks like me, And I'm not anymore, by the way. That was when I was
I love geometry.
So Jen's passionate about geometry. Okay, so we have that. But
so we've been excellent, be excellent at things you love and you're passionate about. So what do we aim to be at the things that we have to do?
So again, the principles that I'm going to go through in saving and investing, even the ones I've talked about now, you don't have to be passionate about math to save 15 cents of every dollar, to use coupons or to use the right credit card rebates. That doesn't require passion. And even the investment principles I'm going to go through when we get to that are simplistic enough that anyone can follow. I've got some friends. I got two friends. I'm not going to mention their names because in case they watch this. But we talk about investing, and they both say, "Oh, I got a guy." I said, "What do you mean you got a guy? Why do you need a guy?" "Oh, I guess he's an investment expert." I said, "You're paying that guy 1% to 2% to have a guy. You don't need a guy. And both of these guys are really good at math and really smart people, but they think they need a guy." So the principles that I'm going to talk about when we get to this don't require you to have a guy. You are the guy because it's so easy and so basic that you don't need to be the guy. And you don't need to be passionate about math, for God's sakes. If I taught people investment principles that required you to be a mathlete, or have a high math IQ, I think we'd zone out pretty quick. They tune out of this podcast and go to something else pretty quick. So none of the stuff that I'm going to talk about requires that level of genius at all. But what I'm saying though, Luke, whatever you do, I know for you, it's a lot of the self-help stuff that you have in your business. You're passionate about that, and it shows. And that's exactly what you have to do. Yeah. I hope I answered that right.
Yeah. Well, I guess just the other part of I guess if your son come home and said, "Well, I'm not." So to me, it's easy to be excellent at what we do love to do. It's easier. But the things that we have to do, have you got any strategies as to how we motivate ourselves to do them? Because in a recent client session, I actually had a young girl who, isn't motivated by school, and she feels like she's spending so much time, it takes up all her time and it takes away from what she does love to do. And so one of the things I kind of helped her do, I guess, a strategy that I've developed in myself is connect what we don't love to the things that we do love in some way, And
Like to your highest value, for example, if it's the better you do in school, if the person really values social time with their friends, it's like, well, the better you do in school, the sooner you get your homework done at an excellent level, the better your grades are, the more time or freedom you have to spend with your friends.
yeah, and just learning to fall in love with the process of excellence, no matter what it is, even if it is boring. It's like, okay, well, regardless of the subject, whether I'm passionate about it or not, how do you like the act of doing something really good? And I guess that's discipline, isn't it? So discipline is like doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but doing them like you love it with excellence. So like as a boxer, getting up and running or getting up and going training at 4:30 in the morning, which is something I used to do a lot, is something you don't really want to do, but you get up and just do it, and you do it, and you feel proud of the fact that you did it, even though you didn't want to do it. So yeah, that's just the younger me looking, the version of me that's younger that may be watching this, that's looking for that different perspective on doing things I don't want to do, but doing them still with excellence. And yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, not everybody is self-motivated, and some people will never be motivated, and some people will never be successful, quite honestly. So it's hard to teach motivation. That's your job, really, not mine, really. But I think the girl who your client you mentioned, she's got to find what it is she really loves to do, and focus on that and get really good at that. And then along with that, the things that she doesn't like to do that you mentioned, she's got to realize that some of these things have to be done anyway. And she's got to come up with a routine or a simple way of making sure that they do. And then that person will probably be successful in life. Maybe not financially successful, but she'll get through life. So it's really hard to train motivation. You're either motivated or you're not, I think. And I hate to say it that way, but I think that's one thing that parents can teach that at an early age too. Now, if you're going to ask me how you teach it, I'm not sure. I think we did it with my son just by trying to get him to be more like us, maybe. It's hard to say, but there are certain things you have to do. You may not love to do them. Nobody likes to sit down and pay their bills every month, but you got to do it. And you try to make it simple. You go from, okay, it used to be 2 hours, now it's an hour. I can do it in a half hour. I got to do it. Got to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And I guess I could do a whole podcast on motivation and stuff. And we can.
That's the next one. There you go.
Yeah.
We got more subjects to cover.
Yeah. So many things came to my mind.
Well, in the last podcast I did was with a school teacher who's actually one of the teachers who really on a mission to help kids think for themselves and not try to teach them how to think. That's why he was an engineer or was studying to be an engineer, and he was getting taught what to think instead of how to think, and he developed a passion in teaching. Now his mission is to excellent teacher. I would definitely send my kid to him. He's Stuart. He's episode number 5, I think. And I guess one of the key things that he said in there, and we discussed in that, is how the act of just whatever a parent does models to the child becomes their way of doing things. So I guess one of the best ways for a parent to teach their kids financial success is be excellent yourself, right? And demonstrate these principles, and they will naturally pick it up as a result of that, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. And it sounds like your guy there who's teaching that knows what he's doing in that field.
Yeah,
it's not my field, but I'm sure there is a field, and I'm sure that if I watch if people watch that, they would learn more about how to get their children motivated.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And I would say, I think most people, including kids, but definitely kids, learn from stories. So if someone was just to tell a moving story about like, hey, here's when I wasn't educated in finances, and then I owed all this money because I didn't know to save 30% or whatever for my taxes. And that really sucked. And that could potentially happen to you too if you decide not to learn this stuff. And then you might learn the lesson that way, like I did. I wish I had been taught that. Like I literally had to learn it the hard way when I was playing pro and wasn't taught this stuff, right? So telling stories, I think, is really engaging for kids. And if you can bring humor into it, I think that helps.
Jennifer, you're absolutely right. The whole story thing, even in business, I used to tell people, say, "Oh, Bill's got a story for everything," and that's for that exact reason. That's how people learn.
Yeah.
And the stories were all 95% true. So there was some embellishment maybe to make a point, but people do learn through the hearing stories.
Yeah.
So good point. See, I'm learning here today. I knew it, but I knew it already, but it's good to be refreshed on that. Thank you.
Totally.
So speaking of stories, have you got any stories about a financial failure that has actually become a blessing to you in the long run? And what did you learn?
Well, it's funny that nobody ever tells the stories of their financial failures. You always hear, "Oh, I made 100% on this stock," and then you always want to say, "Well, which ones you lost on? Where'd you lose?" And it's never. Everybody has a story. They just keep them hidden. Okay,
Yes.
but I'll give you one. I can think of one right off the bat. In the 90s, I think it was the mid to late 90s, the stock markets and the financial markets were rising very rapidly every year. I mean, it could do no wrong. And that's when the proliferation of online trading, E-Trade, all these things came into play. And I was working at a job pretty hard, but it was a home office job. So on my breaks, I was going in and I was day trading. And I was in E-Trade, and I'd buy this stock in the morning and I'd sell it in the nighttime, and I just made, $150. So wow, I'm a genius. And I do this every day. I started getting into this big time because I thought I was a genius, which was silly because there was no genius involved. The markets were all going up at that time. Anybody can be a genius just by pushing buttons. We're all geniuses. The bottom line is every time I pushed the button, E-Trade was charging me $19.95 for the trade, because I made $150 minus 20, minus $19.95. So had I known that, had I known the principles that I now preach, I would have made even more money. So I didn't lose money, but I was doing the day trading. I got wrapped up in it, and I thought I was really good at it. And in the end, everybody was good at it. And then the markets crashed. This is in the very late 90s and the early 2000s. And many of the people that were doing all this trading lost their shirts in this. I was lucky I didn't, because I was still doing it very partially. I didn't lose my money per se, but I gained a valuable lesson that it doesn't work. I mean, it works. Anything can work for the short term. It doesn't work for the long term. What I'm looking for is things that work for the long term. So I stopped. The day trading thing was fun, and it was sexy at the time, but and people still do it, and they still think they're going to beat the market. And I'm going to tell you in part 2 of this, nobody beats the market consistently over time. The three of us could beat the market today, this year, maybe 3 years in a row, but over time, nobody does. So it's not the right way to invest. So that's the story I have for, I wouldn't say it's a failure, but it was a failure of process.
Yeah.
And that was a bad process. But I quickly regrouped after that, never did it again. So, but however, day trading is fun. So if you want to have a small pie slice of money that you're doing trading on, and your friend gives you a hot stock tip and you want to do that, that's fine. But don't put your lion's share of your portfolio in trading like that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. It's a good one.
So Bill, what do you feel drives you or motivates you to be excellent with your finances?
God, it's so hard to say. I mean, I'm just such a, I'm such a self-motivated person. My whole life I played sports like you, Jen, only my whole life. And up until my 40s, when I started retiring from everything, I had a shoulder injury, retired from tennis, retired from baseball, all these things. So I'm very competitive. And, I might go out and play golf with the guys now, but golf takes 5 hours of hitting the ball, and you walk up to it, you hit it again. That's not sexy enough for me. So in some ways, my competitiveness is taken out in my financial work, where the scoreboard, are you winning or losing? Well, you can tell at the end of every day how much money you made in that day or how much wealth. So that's nice. It's got a scoreboard. There's a prize, and the prize is more wealth. So it's probably just my competitive, self-motivated nature, I would think, that gets me doing it. And it's easy and fun to me. I like to, I don't know. I like to go in and spend an hour a week, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take any more, so
Yeah.
maybe that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's cool. And well, in behind every motivation, there's beliefs, and there's ways of thinking, and like, I guess the question is, what are the most important resourceful beliefs that you have about money that you think people could adopt to really sort of make the difference for them, maybe?
Yeah, I think for the most part, we covered it. I mean, the most important ones are work hard to earn it, save a portion of everything you earn, invest those savings in something very simple that's going to be in our part two. If we get to that, don't be stupid. Don't pay credit card companies extra money. Don't go out and spend $20 on a dinner when there was a $10 coupon you could have used. Those sorts of things. Don't work for a company and work your tail off and not take advantage of 401ks, HSAs, all the things that they offer you that end up being free money or free benefits for you. Tuition reimbursement, as I've said it before, there's nothing more important to invest in than yourself. And if a company is offering tuition reimbursement and you're not taking it, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Now, these days, not a lot of companies do that. My MBA was fully paid for by the companies I worked for back then. And in one case, I had to negotiate for that. They weren't going to pay it. And I went in and I said, well, I thought, if you don't pay for it, I'm going to end up going somewhere where they will pay for it. I want you to think about that. And in the end, it was a couple of week negotiation. They ended up paying my entire MBA. So, so those are the basics, I guess.
That's awesome. Knowing your value. Cool. And what would you say, just off the top of your head, what's the significance of money to you?
Well, it's really freedom. It allows you to do what you want to do. I've been working my whole career. I'm not working at the moment. I've taken either a month, a year, or the rest of my life off. I don't know, but I have the freedom to do that right now.
Yeah.
I happen to like working, so I think after a month of doing what I'm doing now, I want to go back and do work again. But it gives you the freedom to do that. And I'm not talking about freedom of buying stuff. Some people like to buy stuff. I don't see any point in that. You've seen my place. I only have so much room for more stuff. I don't need to.
Beautiful place, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't need to. I don't have a low self-esteem, so I have to have a real expensive car to boost it up. You don't need any of that. The material stuff isn't important. If I want to take a nice scuba vacation, I can. Because I have the freedom to do that. So money to me is it gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. Now, when you realize I'm later in my life than you guys, so I have more freedom than you do because I have more money because I've had more time to grow the money. At your age, your young years like you are, you're going to have a little bit of money to go take your vacations or whatever, but not the full level of freedom I'm talking about now. And that's why you have to use time to your advantage.
Yeah. And that freedom goes beyond vacations and beyond just time off. It also spreads out into the future generations of your bloodline, I guess. So down to your children and beyond, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I wanted my son to have the advantages I have, so I'm using a person funded by me 529 to pay for his MBA. Why? Because I paid for it in the 90s when he was born in 95. So in the late 90s, I was putting $50 a week in it or whatever, and using the stock market's gains to build this amount up. And now so it was easy. Could you live for $50 a week less? Yeah, I did back then. I went out to eat one less time or whatever, and I paid for my son's education. So you're right. You can. It's good for your family as well.
I think that's an incredible principle, and that's what I'm about. That's what we want to jump in and ask you next about the principles. But that there's a principle that you keep it keeps popping up to me, which is the long-term thinking. You really think ahead. The fact that you're saving $50 every week or what it was for your child to eventually in the future be able to fund his MBA if he wants it, or whatever else he wanted to do. That's an incredible thing. And I don't think enough people, I mean, that's a massive generalization, but there's a lot of people who don't think that far ahead, who don't plan and strategize for that long-term approach. And I'm really seeing the value of that myself.
I think so many people are focused on instant gratification. And if you're probably too young to remember this, but there was a TV show called The Honeymooners, the black and white TV show with Ralph Cramden and Norton and the little family in the apartment back in the 40s or 50s. But Ralph Cramden, always every episode he seemed to have a scheme on how to get rich quick, and it was always a scheme. It never worked. He never got anywhere. It's just not and it was very instructive in the real world. You don't get rich quick. If you want to get wealthy, it takes time, and because of the time value of money. Just ask Albert Einstein. Okay, so you need to use that time, and so you have to have a long-term perspective. Okay, 5% of the people get rich quick by doing something amazing and get lucky. Okay, but the majority of us need to use time and need to have a long-term perspective on this. So you don't want to be like Ralph Cramden of The Honeymooners.
I love it. So on that, what are your top financial principles that teenagers can begin applying now? I'm sure we've gone over some of them, but even if we can go over them, if there's a teenager listening or a parent listening to what they can instruct their teenagers to begin acting on these principles, what are some of them things they could begin applying now?
Yeah. Okay. We covered most of it. Let me try here. Because I remember I was a teenager once. First off, earn every penny you can. I used to babysit, mow lawns, sell golf balls, whatever, before your working age. Earn as much as you can, go out and do things that you enjoy doing, but you gotta, back then when I did babysitting, I got $0.25 an hour. Today you get $5 an hour babysitting, and that's an easy job. So as a teenager, you want to find ways to earn money. Then, as so important, spend less than you earn. If you can save 15 cents or more of every dollar, do that. Work hard, be good at what you do. Don't do dumb things like credit card debt and all that.
Yep.
I think it's the same basic principles we've covered here.
Yeah.
Nothing's different. They're all basic, and they're simple. They're simple to do. When I asked my nephew, can you save 15 cents of every dollar? He said, yeah. I said, that's what I want you to remember from your Uncle Bill. If you remember nothing else about me, remember that. He said, well, I can do that. And it's pretty simple.
That sounds like that's such a trivial thing for a teenager. Well, why say 15 cents? I'd rather just spend it, because it's not a big thing. But what they're not understanding, what I didn't understand, I say this from my personal experience, was that 15 cents isn't just 15 cents from the dollar. What that is 15,000 from the $100,000 that you have. It's building that habit. It's it's 15,000 out of every 100,000 that you're saving every year, or whatever it is. And that's a valuable habit to build. And it's all a part of the thinking long term. It's a marathon, not a sprint principle that you had. And just thinking financially. Yeah.
It's funny that I use 15 cents because, for me, I save more than that. I used to save 50 cents or more. Once I learned about the time value of money, I wanted to grow it. Yeah. But if you say even 20 cents, it sounds like it's a burden. So it's almost like it's psychological. If you say 15 cents, it doesn't sound like a burden as much as if you say 20 cents. So that's why I use that for young people, because it sounds like it's very doable. I use a 15-cent number, but
so that's make it sustainable.
Yeah, make it easy and sustainable. And they also, if you ask them, they all say yes. If you said 20 cents, some of them might say, well, I don't know if I can do that, but 15 cents, they always say yes.
But it sounds like with what you've done, and it's clearly worked for you, like you want to stretch yourself with how much you can save, like really seriously consider and like do the budgeting, which I'd love to ask you a bit about that. Mm-hmm. Like really get clear on how much am I spending? What is really necessary? What costs can I reduce? Like, how could I, like like thought experiment. How could I save 50% of what I'm making? In what world could I possibly do that? And how would I do that? And then maybe you don't, but at least you've considered it
Yeah.
with the long-term benefit that it would offer.
It's funny you talk about budgeting because I'm passionate about I've done them in business for many, many years. So I do it in my personal life also. When my college buddies get together with me once a year, and some of them look at me like I'm a psycho because I say, I'm doing a personal budget. Like, what? How would you do that? But it's actually very easy. I mean, all you do is it's a spreadsheet, and I update it once a year, maybe it takes me an hour, and it helps me understand where I'm spending money and where I might save money. So I have all my expenses laid out on it. What my cable bill costs, what my cell phone bill costs. And once a year I look at them and say, well, maybe I can do better here. And that's it. It takes me maybe 5 hours a year of work, but it keeps me grounded, I think is the word we're looking for here, as to what you can spend, what you can save, and to maximize the principle of the time value of money.
Yeah.
But however, budgeting is something I don't recommend for teenagers because they don't, it's just too complicated for them. And even my son at age 27, he's like, I'm not doing that, Dad. Yeah. So
how would you simplify it for them though? Like if they were to want to start
Easy.
budgeting.
Easy. What you do is you put there's one line of your income, whatever your income is. And then your expenses is you put the top 5 expenses. You got a house, you got a car, you got insurance, the top 5, and then you have everything else is discretionary. Like, so you have 6, an 8-line budget. And now that'll help you see, especially if you're having financial problems, you can start to see where the money's bleeding. Okay. And because you say, well, let's see, I just bought a camper for $90,000. Well, that's not in there. So you put the big ticket items in there as a start. And then when you see how it helps you, how it's a valuable tool for you, now you can start going into the detail that I do, where you're laying out all the rows of expenses.
Yeah, I just did a basic personal financial budget with a life coaching client of mine just yesterday. And at first it's like laying out the basics, but then all these extra things kept popping up, and she realized she got so much clarity on why it's all bleeding out and she's got no money at the end of the month. And she was, just by putting it on the paper, she was able to just get that bird's eye view and see, oh, there's like, I'm paying off this loan for 200 and this loan for 85 and this and this and this. And we cut her grocery bill by a quarter, and then we worked to get rid of the loans, which are building interest. And in time, she can see within a few months, she can be having like how much extra money she can have at the end of the month compared to what she has now. So that just getting, I think, self-awareness, isn't it? Just getting awareness is such a powerful tool.
The other thing that I do in mine, it's a spreadsheet. So I have in one row is I have how much my savings. So if I make X income and I spend Y, I have Z of savings. So I put that in a row, and I put an estimate what I'm going to gain. I say, okay, I'm going to 5% year over year. So I can see over time that my wealth, that's a wealth meter, my wealth growing, and that also motivates me. So I can see that going up. So I have it all in one spreadsheet, and I give my son the spreadsheet, took my numbers out and put his numbers in. He didn't create his starting point. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly motivating for kids because I feel like as a teenager or a kid, it's hard it would have been hard for me to be like, oh, when I'm 30, then I will have, the level of freedom or choices or money in my bank account. It's almost hard to attach to that because I wasn't really like motivated by money at that point. But to understand that, like, if you save this amount per month starting in this year, by this year it'll go to this amount with nothing. Like, that longer term zoomed out view is like very
absolutely. You put it on an Excel, and in my case I have graphs showing the wealth buildup, so I know when I'm 76 I know exactly what I'll be worth, for example.
Exactly.
Depending on how the markets go. But that's another thing I always do in my budgets. But it's hard to get people interested. That takes a more, I don't say more passion, but more work. And some people don't want to put that work in. They're willing to save 15 cents of every dollar, and they're willing to put money in the bank and then follow my investment principles of part two. But they're not willing to do budgeting because it's a lot of work.
That's
Okay.
fair. And one thing that I've been doing, like with being business owners, this is really, really important, being a startup or entrepreneurs. I've recently started looking at, I created a budget for us. I cut costs for us as much as I possibly could. And then each week I have booked in a time into my calendar just to like review what I'm spending. How does that align with the budget that I created? It's like 30 minutes a week to do that. And
Yeah, it
that just
doesn't take
helps me
much.
remember, because otherwise I wouldn't prioritize it.
Yeah, 30 minutes a week is doable. Yeah, if you can do it, if you boil it down to that much time, people might actually do it because it is so helpful. But some people don't want to bother. But my son has he's doing his MBA. He's early in his career, so he's working his tail off in that. He doesn't want to be bothered with that. When he's done work, he wants to come play video games. All right, fine, whatever. But you know, if you get down to 30 minutes a week, maybe it's doable at some point for him.
And maybe that's part of why, like, your two friends who you mentioned, maybe that's part of why they do pay someone else that 1 or whatever % to manage their money, because they're like, in my free time, I don't want to be doing this. I want someone else to do it for me. I don't want to think about it. And maybe at a certain point, when you're making a certain amount of money, the best use of your time is to keep making that amount of money and pay someone that percent.
Maybe.
But it sounds like from your perspective, no.
Well, only because from my perspective, no, because my principles are so basic and so simple.
Yeah.
But you don't need a guy. You know, I'm not out there looking for the best stock like his guy apparently is at a cost of 2%.
Yeah.
I'm just investing in the whole market, but that's part two of this. If we get to that,
Find out how to be the guy.
yeah, how to be the guy. Here's how you be the guy.
Part two. I'm looking forward to part two. But tell us about tax planning and learning the basics around tax deferred accounts like Roth IRAs and that's
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a tough one. So taxes, the basic principle is you want to pay less. Okay. I think everybody understands that much. So anytime you can defer taxes, that's generally a good thing, as long as you defer them to a time when the tax burden on that amount will be less. Okay. That's why retirement, like Roth IRAs, or that Roth IRA principle is you pay the tax now. Okay. Wait a minute. No. Yeah, Roth IRA, you pay the tax now. Roth IRA, traditional IRA, you don't. Roth IRA, you pay the tax now. Later, and that money is now tax free forever, and then so it grows tax free, and then when you take it, it's all tax free. So there's a benefit to doing that. You can put it all on a spreadsheet like I have to see that benefit, or you just take it for granted that tax deferral is good. But so IRAs, HSAs, that's a health savings account, 401k, these are all tax deferral tools that are all valuable, especially a 401k company. Not only do you get tax deferral, but a company says, well, every time you put $100 in, I'm going to put $40 in to match it. What? That's free money. Of course, I'll do that. So those are good tools. Tax planning, it's, I've never paid anyone to do my tax. Well, 1 year I did. I do my taxes myself every year. Now, I'm not a tax expert, but I keep them simple. I use TurboTax, and I follow the same basic principle every year. Maybe if I paid a tax attorney, I could have got savings. I don't know, but I'm okay to pay taxes at a fair rate to get the government, the safety and the infrastructure that my government provides. But there are certain tools even then that I do. Like at the end of the year, I do something called tax loss harvesting, which is where you can save a couple $1,000s on taxes. So I learned these things through Google and through, using TurboTax for so long. But I guess that's the basics is defer whatever you can and pay as little tax as you can get away with. And legally, I'm not suggesting doing anything illegal,
Yes.
Yeah.
So like for a kid, for example, who like I'm working through like the limiting beliefs that I realize I have, which is like, it's too hard for me to do this. It's just too complicated. right, for me to learn this stuff? I mean, obviously it's not like you can learn it through Google, like you said, or
Mhm.
studying Warren Buffett or whatever. So like how much time per week or per month do you think,
Yeah.
like, would you recommend a young kid like dedicate to this long-term process of learning this so that they can become independent and then
Yeah.
manage their own money?
Yeah, so I have an answer for that because I've done this already with my son. When he started working and earning income, and this is like 16 or 17 years old. Anytime, as soon as you start working, you owe tax. Okay. What I did was I used TurboTax with him once a year. I said, Bill, you want to earn money? You got to sit down with me for a couple hours and we do your taxes. And we did it once a year together on TurboTax. Okay. Now, at that age, and even where he is now, he's 27 years old, the tax situation that he's in is very simple. He earns money and he pays taxes on that money. It's not like when you're older, like I am, you have investments here, you have tax deferrals, you have, mortgage interest, whatever it is. It's more complicated for guys like me. Right? When you're young, it's very simple. So as long as you teach them, I taught him when he was a dishwasher. He might have made $400 in a year and he had to pay, I don't know, $30 taxes, maybe I guess he doesn't pay anything at that amount, but I taught him at that point, and now he does it on his own. He doesn't even bother me anymore. And I said, you want me to check it for you? He said, no. Of course, he got audited last year and I had to help him with that, but well, it was just a mistake. Well, you get audited when you make a mistake. He made a small mistake. So I think you teach kids early. And if so, in my case, I do it on my own. But if you're a parent using a tax attorney once a year, and you have a kid who's earning, I would say, bring him to the meeting. It's the cost of working and earning is 1 hour a year, 2 hours a year, you got to spend learning how to pay taxes. It's part of the educational process. There again, that's another course we're going to add to our university, guys. Tax plan. We got negotiating, we got health and fitness. We're going to create a school together, I think, at some point here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we've already started that.
So you guys already have one.
Yeah, we'll let's do it. Let's keep building.
Adding to it.
And and on that, if you were giving like advice to your 16-year-old self, what would you say?
I'd say that is learn how to do taxes from someone who knows, from your dad. Or if your dad does it on TurboTax, your dad does it with an attorney, whatever, sit down and learn that. And now with Google, I mean, back then I had to go to the library to learn this stuff. And everything you read in the library it's not like Google where it just came out an hour ago. It might have come out 10 years ago. So it's easy today to learn all this stuff. You could even go on Google or YouTube, for God's sake.
Sure there's a lot.
How do I pay taxes in my teens with a simple job? And it'll walk you through it. So you got to learn. It's just, okay, it's look, it goes back to what you said earlier. It's one of those things you need to do that you're probably not passionate about, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not hard,
And because we work with student athletes and we know how busy they get. So I don't know, student athletes, even if they spend an hour a month, they schedule that into their calendar, just do an hour a month learning about tax this month, long-term saving the next month.
That's good. I like that process.
Sustainable approach, and just schedule it in, just do it.
Totally.
That's cool. I like the way you do it. So if someone's disciplined enough to do that, yeah, good idea.
I mean, a lot of our kids who work with us, they work with us during the summer when they don't have school and they have a break from their academics. And so like that would be a great time to just dive in over summer if it's not as accessible during the school year.
We got to mention YouTube again, because I know I bought a new subwoofer and I don't know how to set it up. And I put in YouTube, walk me through the setup precisely with, it's just unbelievable. And the manual they sent was nothing like the YouTube. The manual sucked. I mean, I just almost threw it away and went to YouTube and okay, now I know how to do it. So you can find anything on YouTube, even this boring tax stuff. I think you can find that as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure they have it in an entertaining approach as well on YouTube. And today's been entertaining for us. And I guess last question, if you're giving life advice to your 16-year-old self, because we're big believers on looking back and taking advice from those who have been there and done that, putting older head on younger shoulders. What advice would you give your younger self, teenage self?
Ooh, that's a good. Well, first of all the financial stuff we talked about already.
Yep.
Secondly, health stuff. So what you eat and how you burn it off with exercise, crucial. So learn that stuff, and which I've been doing for years. I've been swimming a mile a day for like 30 years or something. So I'm a little bit extreme, but you don't have to do that. But
just to cut you off there, everyone. Bill does have abs.
Like a six-pack.
At what age?
no, I do not have.
We were speaking with him the other a few weeks ago. He's
okay. So number one, that's a lie. I don't have abs, and number two, I'm not going to pull up my shirt and show on the camera.
You don't have to do that, but you do have abs.
But okay. Why not let the mystique? Oh yes, I do have abs. Yeah, I'll let that go. But I don't.
Got to maintain them now.
Yeah, but I mean, so the financial stuff, the health and wellness. I really believe in team sports. Everything I learned in team sports as a kid translated to business and then to real life. How do you form a team? How do you play on a team? How do you get along with teammates? How do you put together complementary skills to build a team, right? Jen, your soccer thing. How do you coach that team? How do you motivate players? All those things, competitiveness. How do you win, but don't focus only on winning, but winning is important, sort of thing. So all those things you learn from sports, leadership, which I learned in sports, I also learned in Boy Scouts and other activities you do as a young kid. Get involved, do projects, you see a stretch of road, it's all dirty. Get together a couple of kids and go out and form a project to clean it up one day, just for the fun. And I'll help it. I'll be your escort, or whatever. What's the right word? I'll be your helper, son, if you want to do this. Just teach kids how to do stuff like that. That it's not all video games and eating hot dogs. It's not all that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the basics.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, and we're really excited. Let's put together the part 2 where we'll go dive deeper into principles and what else?
How to invest your savings.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I used to give it in the classes, and I had so much attendance at those classes. People would say, "Oh, you got to go see this. It's really cool." But however, I got to learn how to do a PowerPoint. I probably want to throw like 5 or 6 slides up to make my points.
Yeah, well,
that's easy. We'll walk you through.
All right, so I can learn here too. Yeah, well, I'm always wanting, but let's see if anyone cares first. Let's see what the feedback is on this.
I think they're gonna love it.
Okay.
I definitely would have loved this as a teen. So,
and regardless, it's good to have it up, and
yeah.
anyone who wants to watch it in the future can watch it.
And,
yeah. Okay, sounds good. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed it, and I do look forward to the second part. Can we cut here?
Absolutely. Let's cut it.